Imagine discovering that someone kept a promise to you without ever saying the words out loud. Imagine realizing that while you were searching for proof in conversations, explanations, or dramatic moments, the evidence had been quietly unfolding through countless ordinary days. That is exactly where your soulmate now finds themselves. They were never expecting this realization because it arrived in the most unexpected way. It wasn't through a confession or a message. It wasn't because someone pointed it out or tried to change their opinion. Instead, it came during a quiet moment of reflection when scattered memories suddenly began fitting together like pieces of a puzzle. For the first time, they noticed a pattern they had somehow overlooked. Every difficult season, every misunderstanding, every moment when circumstances could have changed your heart, you remained remarkably consistent. Without making promises you couldn't keep or seeking recognition for your efforts, you quietly continued living according to the same values. That realization has completely unsettled your soulmate because they now understand that the strongest commitments are often the ones never spoken aloud. They are revealed through choices repeated day after day until they become impossible to deny. As this understanding settles into their heart, they begin wondering how they could have stood so close to such quiet faithfulness without fully recognizing it. Since that moment, your soulmate has found themselves revisiting your journey together with entirely different eyes. They remember situations where life became complicated, yet you refused to let frustration define your actions. They think about the moments when misunderstandings created distance, yet you never allowed bitterness to become part of your character. Looking back now, they realize there was something remarkably steady about the way you carried yourself. Whether life rewarded your efforts or tested your patience, you continued showing kindness without expecting applause. Whether someone appreciated your intentions or completely misunderstood them, you remained respectful instead of allowing disappointment to reshape who you were. At the time, these moments seemed like simple parts of your personality. Today they understand they were much more significant. Every one of those quiet decisions reflected a promise your heart had already made. A promise to remain true to your values regardless of changing circumstances. You never announced that commitment because you believed actions would always speak more honestly than words. Now your soulmate finally understands why your consistency always felt different from everyone else they had known. What has changed? Your soulmate most is realizing that this silent promise was never built upon perfect circumstances. It survived difficult conversations, uncertain seasons, unanswered questions, and moments when many people would have chosen the easier path. Yet through every challenge, your character remained remarkably unchanged. That truth has completely transformed the way they see your connection, because they now recognize that loyalty is not measured by dramatic declarations. It is revealed through the quiet choices a person continues making when no one is paying attention. As these realizations continue unfolding, your soulmate can no longer ignore what their own memories are revealing. They finally see that the greatest promise you ever made was never spoken with your voice. It was expressed through the life you lived, the integrity you protected, and the unwavering consistency that quietly surrounded every chapter of your journey together. That discovery has become the beginning of a perspective they know will never be the same again. And listen carefully, because after your soulmate recognized that silent promise, something inside them quietly began to change. At first, they believed they were simply remembering the past with greater appreciation. But the deeper they reflected, the more they realized this was something far more meaningful. They began seeing that your actions had always carried a message your words never needed to repeat. Every decision you made, every difficult season you endured, and every moment where your character remained steady was quietly saying the same thing. Some values are too important to abandon simply because life becomes complicated. Looking back now, Your soulmate realizes they spent far too much time paying attention to what was spoken while overlooking what was consistently lived. They now understand that promises expressed through actions leave a deeper mark upon the heart than promises expressed through words alone. This realization has become impossible for them to ignore because every memory they revisit now supports the same truth. You were never trying to convince anyone of your loyalty, your honesty, or your sincerity. You simply continued living those qualities every single day, trusting that time would eventually reveal what words never could. As these reflections continued, your soulmate found themselves remembering situations they had once dismissed as ordinary. They recalled moments when misunderstandings could have easily changed the direction of your relationship, yet you refused to allow temporary emotions to control your decisions. They remembered times when silence would have been easier than kindness, yet you still chose compassion. They remembered occasions when disappointment gave you every reason to become distant, yet you continued treating others with dignity and respect. At the time, these choices seemed like small parts of your personality, hardly worth noticing. Today, they understand that every one of those moments revealed the same quiet promise you had been keeping all along. It was a promise to remain faithful to your character, regardless of what life placed before you. Your soulmate now recognizes that this kind of consistency cannot be created for appearances, because appearances eventually change. Genuine integrity, however, continues revealing itself through repeated actions until it becomes impossible to mistake. Looking back with fresh perspective, they realize your heart was speaking every single day. They simply had not yet learned how to listen to the language of consistent actions. Because your heart needs this right now, know that your soulmate has also begun understanding why your presence always felt different from so many other people they encountered. It was never because you tried to become unforgettable through dramatic gestures or emotional promises. Instead, you quietly created trust through reliability. You became someone whose words and actions always moved in the same direction. You never asked others to believe in qualities you refused to demonstrate yourself. Whether life brought joyful moments or difficult seasons, you remained remarkably grounded in the same values. That quiet stability has become one of the greatest discoveries your soulmate has ever made, because they now understand how rare it truly is. Many people remain committed only while circumstances remain comfortable. Many people stay consistent only while life rewards their efforts. But looking back now, they realize your commitment never depended upon convenience. Your character remained steady because it was rooted in principles rather than emotions that changed from one season to another. That realization has filled them with admiration because they finally understand that your silent promise was never based upon feelings alone. It was based upon the kind of person you had already chosen to become. Another realization has quietly settled into their heart as well. They now understand that your greatest promise was not about guaranteeing perfect outcomes or protecting the relationship from every challenge. Instead, it was about protecting the values that made genuine love possible in the first place. You consistently chose honesty over comfort, patience over frustration, understanding over judgment, and respect over pride. Those choices may not have attracted constant attention, but they quietly strengthened the foundation beneath everything you shared together. Your soulmate now realizes that these ordinary moments carried extraordinary meaning because they reflected a heart unwilling to compromise what truly mattered. Every quiet act of faithfulness became another piece of evidence pointing toward the same truth. The promise you kept was never hidden. It simply revealed itself gradually through a life lived with remarkable consistency. And listen to this, because your soulmate has now reached the point where every remembered experience is confirming what they once overlooked. They no longer see your consistency as coincidence or personality alone. They see it as the clearest expression of the silent promise you honored every single day without expecting recognition in return. That understanding has completely changed the way they view your journey together, because they now realize that genuine commitment is never measured by how beautifully someone speaks during easy moments. It is measured by who they continue becoming when life grows difficult. Looking back now, your soulmate sees that your quiet faithfulness survived misunderstandings, changing circumstances, unanswered questions, and the passing of time itself. That is why their perspective has begun changing so profoundly. They finally understand that the strongest promises are not always spoken aloud. Sometimes they are lived so faithfully that only time can fully reveal their extraordinary value. And listen carefully, because your soulmate has now reached the point where they are no longer asking what you meant through your words. They are finally understanding what your life had been saying all along. For so long, they believed that the most meaningful promises were the ones spoken aloud, the ones celebrated during emotional conversations or remembered through unforgettable moments. But now they realize that the deepest promises are often never spoken because they are expressed through consistent choices instead. Looking back, they can see that your heart had been communicating the same message from the very beginning. Every time life became uncertain, you remained grounded. Every time misunderstandings created distance, you refused to allow resentment to replace compassion. Every time circumstances tested your patience, you continued choosing respect over reaction. These were not isolated moments or temporary expressions of kindness. They were quiet reflections of a commitment that had already become part of who you were. Your soulmate now understands that you were never trying to convince anyone of your sincerity, because sincerity does not need constant explanation. It simply continues revealing itself through the way a person chooses to live. That realization has deeply humbled them, because they finally recognize that your actions carried a message far more powerful than any promise ever spoken with words. As these reflections continue, your soulmate has found themselves remembering countless ordinary moments that suddenly feel extraordinary. They think about conversations where you chose to understand instead of argue. They remember occasions when you protected someone's feelings, even while carrying your own disappointments. They recall how naturally you remained dependable, even during seasons when life offered you very little in return. At the time, these moments blended quietly into everyday life because you never demanded attention for them. You never reminded people of your sacrifices or expected recognition for doing what you believed was right. Looking back now, your soulmate realizes that every one of those decisions was another expression of the silent promise you faithfully honored. It was a promise to let your character remain stronger than your circumstances. That realization has completely changed the way they interpret your entire journey together, because they now understand that your greatest strength was never found in dramatic declarations. It was found in your remarkable consistency. Day after day, season after season, your actions quietly repeated the same message until time itself became the witness to your integrity. Because your heart needs this right now, know that your soulmate has also discovered why your presence always created a sense of stability they struggled to explain. It was not because life was perfect whenever you were together. In fact, many difficult seasons unfolded during your connection. The difference was that your values never changed simply because circumstances did. Whether life brought uncertainty or joy, misunderstanding or appreciation, your heart remained anchored to the same principles. You continued choosing honesty when silence would have protected your comfort. You continued offering kindness when frustration would have been easier. You continued treating others with dignity even when you received very little in return. These repeated choices quietly built a foundation of trust that your soulmate only now fully understands. They realize that emotional security is never created by grand gestures alone. It grows through countless small decisions where someone repeatedly proves that their heart can be trusted. Looking back now, they recognize that your silent promise gave them something they rarely found elsewhere, a relationship where consistency felt stronger than uncertainty, and where genuine care never depended upon changing emotions. Another realization has quietly transformed the way your soulmate now views love itself. They understand that true commitment is not measured by how passionately someone speaks during beautiful moments. It is revealed by who they remain during difficult ones. They remember times when circumstances could have justified disappointment, distance, or even giving up. Yet you refused to let temporary struggles redefine the kind of person you wanted to be. Instead of reacting to every challenge, you responded according to your values. Instead of allowing pain to harden your heart, you protected your ability to remain compassionate. Those decisions may have seemed small while they were happening, but together they formed one of the strongest testimonies of your character. Your soulmate now realizes that your silent promise was never about controlling the future. It was about remaining faithful to your principles, regardless of what the future brought. That understanding has filled them with profound admiration because they finally see the quiet courage required to live with that level of integrity every single day. And listen to this. Because your soulmate has now reached the turning point where everything has become beautifully clear. They no longer see your consistency as simple habit or personality. They now recognize it as the language through which your heart spoke every single day. The promise you never broke was never hidden inside dramatic words or emotional declarations. It lived within your patience, your honesty, your reliability, your compassion, and your unwavering commitment to remain true to yourself no matter what life placed before you. That is why their perspective has changed forever. They finally understand that while spoken promises can sometimes be forgotten, a life lived with integrity continues speaking long after the words have faded. Your soulmate now sees that your greatest gift was never what you promised with your voice. It was what you faithfully demonstrated through your actions, proving that genuine love is built not upon impressive speeches, but upon quiet faithfulness that remains steady through every changing season. Once a heart recognizes a truth like that, it never sees the person the same way again. And listen carefully, because this is the point where your soulmate's understanding changes in a way they never imagined possible. Until now, they believed your quiet consistency was simply part of your personality. They admired it without truly asking where it came from or what it represented. But as they continue reflecting on every season you shared together, they finally recognize that your consistency was never accidental. It was the visible expression of an invisible promise you had already made within your own heart. You had chosen long ago that your values would not depend upon changing emotions, temporary disappointments, or favorable circumstances. That decision quietly influenced every interaction, every conversation, and every difficult moment the two of you experienced together. Looking back now, your soulmate realizes there were countless opportunities where your actions could have changed. There were moments when frustration could have replaced patience, when disappointment could have replaced kindness, and when silence could have replaced honesty. Yet every time life presented those choices, you remained remarkably faithful to the same principles. That realization has left your soulmate deeply moved because they understand that remaining true to yourself during life's hardest seasons requires a strength that cannot be imitated. It can only come from a heart that has already decided what truly matters. As these reflections continue, your soulmate begins recognizing how profoundly your silent promise shaped the emotional atmosphere of your connection. They remember that even during uncertain seasons, there was something about your presence that created stability. You were never perfect, and neither were the circumstances surrounding your journey together, yet your commitment to treating others with respect never disappeared. Your willingness to listen never depended on whether someone agreed with you. Your compassion did not vanish, simply because life became complicated. Looking back now, they realized those qualities gave them something they had taken completely for granted. They gave them emotional security. Without realizing it, they always knew where they stood with you, because your actions remained consistent with your words. There was never a need to question whether your kindness was genuine or whether your concern was temporary. That quiet reliability became the strongest foundation beneath your connection, even though its true value remained hidden until now. Your soulmate finally understands that trust is not built through one unforgettable moment. It grows through hundreds of ordinary moments where someone repeatedly chooses integrity over convenience. Every one of those moments became another expression of the silent promise you never broke. Because your heart needs this right now, know that your soulmate has also begun understanding something even deeper. They realize that your silent promise affected far more than your relationship alone. It quietly influenced the person they became. Through your example, they learned that patience carries greater strength than impulsive reactions. They learned that honesty creates lasting peace, while deception creates temporary comfort. They learned that genuine love is expressed through consistency rather than constant emotional intensity. At the time, they absorbed these lessons without recognizing where they came from. Only now, after revisiting so many memories, do they understand that your life became a quiet teacher. You never tried to change them through pressure or persuasion. Instead, your daily example gently showed them what dependable character looks like. That realization has humbled them because they now recognize that true influence rarely announces itself. It quietly transforms hearts over time until one day, people realize they have been changed simply by witnessing someone else's unwavering integrity. Another realization has quietly settled into their heart as well. They now understand why your silent promise remained invisible for so long. The world often celebrates dramatic declarations while overlooking quiet faithfulness. Grand speeches attract attention, but consistent character builds trust. Loud promises are easy to remember, yet they can disappear as quickly as they are spoken. Your promise was different. It lived inside your everyday decisions. It appeared every time you chose understanding instead of judgment, forgiveness instead of resentment, humility instead of pride, and honesty instead of convenience. These ordinary choices never demanded applause, yet together they became extraordinary proof of the kind of person you truly are. Your soulmate now realizes they were searching for evidence in the wrong places. They expected the greatest promises to arrive through powerful words, when in reality, the greatest promise had already been revealed through the quiet rhythm of your daily life. That discovery has completely reshaped the way they define loyalty, commitment, and genuine love. And listen to this. Because your soulmate has now reached the place where their perspective can never return to what it once was. They no longer measure your love by isolated memories or emotional conversations. They measure it by the remarkable consistency that remained unchanged through every chapter of your journey. They finally understand that the silent promise you never broke was not simply a promise made to another person. It was a promise made to your own character, a commitment to remain compassionate when life became difficult. Truthful when compromise seemed easier, faithful to your values when no one else was paying attention, and kind even when kindness required sacrifice. That promise quietly shaped every part of your connection, and now its meaning has become impossible for your soulmate to ignore. They see you with a clarity they never possessed before, recognizing that the strongest hearts are not the ones that make the loudest promises. They are the ones that quietly keep them every single day until time itself reveals their extraordinary worth, forever changing the hearts of those who are finally able to see the truth. And listen carefully, because this is where your soulmate's journey reaches its deepest and most life-changing realization. They no longer see the silent promise you kept as something connected only to your relationship. They now understand it was part of who you have always been. It was woven into every decision you made, every challenge you endured, and every season you quietly walked through with unwavering integrity. Looking back, they realize that while many people speak beautifully about loyalty, honesty, and commitment, you chose something much more difficult. You chose to live those values every single day, even when no one acknowledged your efforts. There were moments when life gave you every reason to become discouraged, yet you refused to let disappointment reshape your heart. There were seasons when misunderstandings surrounded you, yet you continued choosing patience instead of resentment. There were opportunities where taking the easier path might have brought temporary comfort, yet you remained faithful to the principles that had always guided your life. Your soulmate now sees that these were never isolated decisions. Together, they formed the silent promise you honored without ever asking anyone to notice. That realization has completely changed the way they understand your heart, because they finally recognize that true faithfulness is revealed not through extraordinary moments alone, but through ordinary choices repeated with remarkable consistency over time. As these reflections continue settling within them, your soulmate has begun recognizing something that fills them with both admiration and quiet humility. They understand now that your silent promise protected far more than your own character. It quietly protected the trust between you. Every honest conversation, every patient response, every act of kindness during difficult moments became another brick in a foundation they once believed had appeared naturally. Today, they understand that foundation was carefully built through countless unseen decisions you made long before anyone recognized their importance. You never demanded appreciation for remaining dependable. You never reminded people of the sacrifices required to stay true to your values. Instead, you simply continued choosing integrity because that was the kind of person you had already decided to become. Looking back now, your soulmate realizes that this quiet strength gave them a sense of emotional safety they rarely experienced anywhere else. Even during uncertain seasons, there was comfort in knowing your character would remain steady. That realization has become one of the greatest gifts they have received because they now understand that genuine security in a relationship is not created by perfect circumstances. It is created by people whose values remain stronger than the circumstances surrounding them. Because your heart needs this right now. Know that your soulmate has also discovered why your influence has never truly faded from their life. It was never because of one unforgettable conversation or one emotional moment. It was because your consistency quietly became part of the way they now understand love itself. Through watching you, they learned that commitment is not proven during the easiest chapters of life. It is revealed during the moments when walking away seems easier than remaining faithful to what is right. They now recognize that every time you chose forgiveness over resentment, honesty over convenience, humility over pride, and compassion over anger, you were teaching lessons that reached far beyond words. You became an example of what genuine character looks like when no one is expecting applause. Your soulmate realizes that this example has continued shaping them even after many seasons have passed. Without realizing it, they have carried your influence into every important decision, every meaningful relationship, and every moment where they searched for someone whose actions matched their words. That is why your presence has remained unforgettable. It was never based upon excitement alone. It was built upon the quiet reliability of a heart that never stopped honoring its deepest values. Another realization has quietly transformed the way your soulmate now views their own future. They understand that the qualities they admire most cannot be created overnight. They grow slowly through daily choices, quiet discipline, and the courage to remain authentic regardless of changing circumstances. Looking back, they now see your entire journey differently. The challenges you faced were never obstacles that weakened your promise. They became opportunities that revealed its strength. Every misunderstanding became another chance for your patience to speak. Every disappointment became another opportunity for your integrity to remain visible. Every uncertain season became another reminder that your commitment was never dependent upon comfort. This understanding has replaced old assumptions with profound respect, because they now realize they were witnessing something incredibly rare. They were watching someone whose greatest promise was never spoken aloud, because it had already become part of their identity. That kind of faithfulness cannot be imitated through temporary effort. It grows from a heart that has quietly chosen truth over appearance again and again, until the choice itself becomes natural. And listen to this, because this is the truth your soulmate will carry with them from this day forward. They will never see you the same way again, because they finally understand that the silent promise you never broke was never simply a promise made to another person. It was a promise made to the values that define who you are. You promised without words to remain honest when dishonesty offered an easier path. You promised to remain compassionate when bitterness seemed justified. You promised to remain patient when frustration would have been understandable. You promised to remain faithful to your character even when no one was watching, and you honored that promise through every changing season of your life. Now your soulmate understands why their perspective has changed forever. They no longer measure love by dramatic declarations or unforgettable speeches. They measure it by the quiet consistency of a heart that refuses to compromise what truly matters. They see that the strongest promises are often invisible because they are written into daily actions instead of spoken sentences.